Welcome to Love Bites. Love Bites. Love Bites. Love Bites. By Dr. Tara, your destination for sexual wellness and mindful relationship advice. Hope you're having an orgasmic day.
So you've seen my Cosmo article on giving tantric massages, right? One of the best massage candles out there is by Maude. Maude has a toxic-free, skin-softening, gorgeous massage candle I recommend. If you'd like to buy one, you can go to getmaude.com/Dr. Tara. That's getmaude.com/DRTARA. This information is also in my show description. Then you can use the discount code Dr. Tara, DRTARA, for $5 off your order. Let's get massaging.
Hey, loves. At some point in our lives, we would have had an experience with anxiety, right? Be it performance anxiety, work anxiety, family anxiety, or just daily anxiety. But in this case today, we're going to talk about sexual anxiety. And I'm just so excited that my guest is here with me today to share his personal story and help me normalize having sex talks when it comes to sexual anxiety. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Matt.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tara. I feel like that's the appropriate way to be welcomed on the show. It's my pleasure.
Yes, I love it. Pleasure and have an orgasmic day.
Exactly.
So like I said, I'm grateful that, a friend is willing to come forward and, actually having a talk about sexual issues that millions, if not more, of people have an experience on a daily basis, and no one is talking, and everyone is, trying to hide that they have issues. Like, if I have issues, I'm not afraid to say it because I want to step up and show people it's normal to have issues, even when you're a sex professor. I have issues too. So I'm really excited for our conversation today. So Matt is originally you're from the East Coast, right?
Correct, from New York.
New York City.
Mm-hmm. Big Apple.
Yeah, and then now you're in California. Now you're in Los Angeles. So Matt and I are friends, and we often have candid conversations. So let's get to it. So, what is the kind of the story of your situational sexual anxiety situation?
Yeah. So my sexual anxiety has really, been part of my life for a very long time, almost as early as my first sexual encounter. And I think it's really underscored by my use of pornography in particular. Mm-hmm. So at a young age, I started watching pornography. And I think this is kind of problematic because it led to me being overexposed to sexual stimuli. Mm. And when you're a young age and you're overexposed to something like that, it can kind of cause some adverse effects down the road. So I didn't know this at the time, but there's this thing called the Coolidge effect that I learned about later on, where the story goes, the President Calvin Coolidge and his wife were doing a tour of some government farm, and they were in separate groups, and his wife was out in front, and she's going through this chicken coop, and she's asking the tour guide, because she notices a rooster is mating very frequently. And she goes, does that rooster always mate that much? And the guy goes, oh, yeah, dozens of times a day. She goes, you should tell that to Mr. Coolidge when he comes by. So the president, Mr. Coolidge, comes by, and the tour guide tells him that. And the president goes, yeah, but is he with the same hen every time? And he goes, oh, no, it's a different hen every time. And he goes, okay, you tell that to Mrs. Coolidge. And what this story demonstrates is that there's this effect when you're exposed to novel stimuli, mm-hmm. and specifically in porn, you're looking at images of and videos of different women constantly, mm-hmm. and the novelty of always having a new person, a virtual partner in front of you, enables you to keep going and going and going. Whereas in a normal sexual situation, you would kind of tap out after you have your normal sexual encounter. So I was experiencing this effect by watching a lot of pornography, and it was kind of like dulling my senses so that whenever I was in a sexual situation with a real human partner, I wasn't able to get aroused because the stimulus of being with somebody in person was not as strong as
Right. Like,
having
man, it's
watching all
not
that
as
pornography.
exciting, not
Yeah.
as crazy, and maybe the bodies look different, right? Because I mean,
Yeah.
porn actors, like performers, sometimes they look like too good.
Right. Yeah. And so it's hard to go from one stimulus to another. And your brain doesn't really know the difference between looking at an image of a naked woman and a naked woman.
No.
I mean, it does, but it kind of doesn't. Like it still sees something as sexually arousing.
Yeah.
And so ended up happening was whenever I was having a sexual encounter, I was like, I couldn't get aroused.
Mhm.
And, it wasn't just one time, it was a bunch of times. And like after a
Mhm.
while of experiencing this over and over again, I started to get these feelings of anxiety every
Of
time I knew
course.
I was going to be in a sexual encounter. And, it was pretty nerve wracking. Like I didn't know if I
Yeah.
was going to be able to perform this time. And,
Wait. Okay. Back up. I have a question. So when you said
mhm.
you started watching a lot of porn since young age, how young is this? Like, how old were you?
Probably like 14, 15. Definitely by the
Yeah, but
time I
that's
was
not that
16.
young. I
Yeah,
feel
but
like
still, yeah.
nowadays with, because we're older, so like we had dial-up internet. But like
Mhm.
nowadays, I think kids are watching porn at like 10 years old.
Yeah, you're right. It probably is younger, and it did kind of come about with the introduction of high-speed internet.
Yeah, which
One
is
thing,
scary because
yeah,
if your story is common amongst all the young men in the world, then all these kids like of this generation that have smartphones that can access
yeah,
porn from their phone anywhere they are, like that's pretty scary of like how many young men and boys are going to be experiencing this like anxiety.
yeah. It's something that I think about too. Like the youth of our generation are at more of a disadvantage than I was, because like high-speed internet wasn't around as when I was able to access it at this impressionable
Right.
age. What I think is important, though, is that I did start watching porn prior to any sexual experiences in real life. So I think that's probably worth
Oh.
noting.
Oh, it sets the tone. It's like, oh,
Right.
this is sex. It's like the
Right.
only reality you know.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. It was the only reality I knew. And, this went on until I finally lost my virginity at the age of 27. And
We
you
call
can,
we call it a sexual debut now.
yeah, yeah, and a sexual debut. And I know people bloomed like later than that, but you can imagine that was pretty stressful for anybody, especially considering how much pressure society puts on people, adolescents, to lose their virginity at an early age.
Especially young men, especially
Yeah,
boys.
yeah,
In
like
high school, people are already kind of talking about like, oh, did you have sex? Did you have like it's like a thing where it's like a what's the word? Like popularity contest.
yeah, everyone wants to be seen as kind of like this sexual conqueror
Right,
as
right.
a young
Especially
adult.
boys.
Yeah, exactly. And not being able to like fulfill that fantasy for myself, it just made my anxiety worse and worse as the
Uh-huh.
years went on.
So when did you first like attempt a sexual encounter like with a girl?
Well, my first relationship was actually a long distance one, and we had a lot of phone sex, and phone sex I could, for whatever reason, I could manage that.
Right.
But my first sexual encounter where I was not able to get an erection, I think
Uh-huh.
was sometime in college, and there was probably a few, and I'm not proud of this, but I dealt with it in a very negative way, where I would kind of not blame myself at all. I would blame my partner for, oh,
Uh-huh.
she wasn't attractive enough, she wasn't what I wanted in that moment, and I was kind of like skirt any kind of responsibility and
Uh-huh.
refused to look inwardly to see if there's something I could do differently. And it kind of like just let my anxiety continue to get worse and worse for
Right. Oh my
every sexual
gosh.
encounter.
Thanks for sharing that because I think there are so many misguided men that are still that still have this toxic trait of like blaming their partner instead of
Right.
figuring out what is truly the problem for
Right.
their inability to get an erection.
Right. Taking some ownership or
Right,
looking
right. And just like
inwardly.
looking inward. Yeah, like
Yeah.
hey, maybe it's you, maybe it's your sexual trauma, maybe it's I don't know, there's, for example, like yours is porn, like, so maybe it's you and it's worth it to examine inward and try to understand like where it comes from so that you can work on it so that for the rest of your life you can have better sex.
Right. Exactly. 100%.
So, I mean, PSA for all the men out there that are blaming their partner for your inability to get an erection, perhaps look inward.
Yeah. And it's scary to do that, to look
Mhm.
inwardly, because you have a tendency to like feel shame
Right.
if you
Yeah.
realize the problem might be with you. But I'm hoping that, through the course of this conversation, we can find that there's nothing really shameful about
No,
it.
not at all. Not at all. And I mean, for women too, I know some women that tell me, uh I'm ashamed or like I feel bad that I can't get wet, which is like a
Mm,
similar
yeah.
situation. Not as bad because you can still use lube and have penetrative sex, but a lot of women feel the shame of
Right.
like, why can't I get wet?
Right.
And it's like, there something wrong with me? And or like my partner is saying like, why can't you get wet? Are you not attracted to me? Or, like what's wrong with your body? A
Right.
lot of women have anxiety about that. Like, why can't I get wet?
Yeah, that I fully believe that. Yeah. It's like the opposite side of the coin there.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so you were in your early 20s trying to have sex but couldn't get an erection, and then finally like and then what happened?
So I eventually stumbled across this TED talk by this guy named Gary Wilson. I think it's titled "The Great Porn Experiment," and that's where
Yes,
it's
love that TED talk.
yeah. Oh, it's excellent. I recommend everyone watch it. And that's where I learned about the Coolidge effect.
Uh-huh.
And I was in a part of my life where I had realized that humility is actually very powerful. Being
Mhm.
able to accept that you don't know everything and maybe you have things to learn. And I've started watching this TED talk, and like he was talking about a lot of the things that I had experienced in my adolescence and early 20s.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait a second, I think, this porn thing isn't doing me any favors. And so that kind of really clued me into the fact that I might have a problem with my porn usage.
Mhm.
And it also helped me realize that my partners were not to blame for my inability to perform. It had to
Mhm.
do with the path that I had been taking up to that point, and I was determined to try and fix it. Um, so I realized that I needed to take steps on improving myself and to overcome what could potentially be an addiction to pornography,
Mhm.
and slowly wean myself off of it. And I did a few different things. I talked to some of my friends about it, got like a support network to
Mhm.
tell them that this is something that I was like going through, and just opened up and was a little vulnerable to some of my friends. And a thought that kind of helped me throughout this whole process was, in my research on porn addiction in general, I found that not only just porn addiction, but like sexual anxiety is something that millions of people, as you said, deal with
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
And having that understanding kind of like let me feel at ease. It's like I'm not the only one that deals with this. It's a
No,
lot of
not at
people.
all. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of people, both men and women, as you also said. And
Mhm.
so that kind of like helped me feel a little relieved that like I wasn't doing this alone.
Mhm.
And so my strategy was I was just going to keep putting myself out there into the dating world and eventually find myself in sexual encounters, which had always given me anxiety in the past. But
Mhm.
I was going to slowly build up my confidence
Mhm.
and like,
So
kind
can we like pause a little bit? I have a
yeah.
question about, okay, so you have sexual anxiety due to the multiple times that you try to have sex and you
Mm,
can't get an erection, and also just like not about just erection, like in general you feel anxious,
yeah.
right? So like I kind of just want to talk about like w- what is sexual anxiety is when you feel like stressed, anxious, nervous when it comes to sex, like whatever it is. Maybe it's performance anxiety, which is like, an erection or can't get an erection or can't keep an erection. Some people can get
Hmm.
hard and then it goes soft in the middle. And then like everything kind of get into your head and then can't kind of recover. So there's like all kinds of things that can be happening with sexual anxiety. So maybe some people can get hard. Maybe they can
Mm,
get an erection, but yet still experience so much anxiety too,
right.
right? Which it doesn't discount like, oh, well, then that doesn't matter as long as you can get hard. Like, I don't think so. I think to be able to be present and enjoy connecting with your partner and enjoying the pleasure fully, we have to understand our anxiety and reduce it,
Right. Yeah,
right?
I agree.
So I have this question for you. So you know that you had sexual anxiety during that time, and yet you still like kind of kept dating and putting yourself in that situation. Like, what were you thinking when you had the sexual anxiety? Were you thinking solely about like, oh shit, I can't get hard. Like I'm not gonna be able to get hard. Like what was your anxiety about?
That was the primary thought. So like leading up to like a date, there's always this voice in the back of my head. It's like, okay, well, say things go well. And then we go back to one of our apartments. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can I see myself in a situation where I'm going to be able to perform? And the answer was always, I don't know. And that kind of
Right.
I don't know was scary. And it made me nervous going into any situation, especially as it started to heat up. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I wouldn't be able to get hard at all. It was just like completely flaccid, and like it just felt like this feeling of nothingness below my belt
Damn.
that always made me scared. I was just like, I don't know if it's going to work or not. And sometimes it might have worked enough to actually get the job done, but like a lot of times that feeling of nothingness was like throughout the entire night. I just couldn't get it up. And so
Really? Okay,
yeah,
okay, but what about masturbation? Like no problem.
oh well, yeah, I could do that. I found that even without pornography, fantasizing in my head was still enough for me to get an erection.
So
But
you know it's psychological, it's not
yeah,
physical because you
right.
can get hard on your own.
Exactly. Yeah. There's just something about being in front of another person, the potential to let somebody down that kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and so that kind of, made my sexual anxiety worse when I was in front of somebody, in the moment.
Uh-huh. So do you think it's like almost about like trying to please your partner and like
Yeah,
the inability to please is scary?
yeah, because I think that I'm more of a giver type of
Uh-huh.
person, and I
Uh-huh.
don't want to. I don't want to let somebody down. But
Right. You
another
are a very
aspect.
generous and kind friend.
Oh,
So I
thank
can
you.
imagine like your partners in the past and currently like they receive a lot from you
Hmm.
sexually.
Yeah,
So I bet like just naturally being a giver, like a giving person and not able to give sexually must have been
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah. There was that was the biggest aspect of it, and then another aspect of it. Up until I lost my virginity, there's always this thought of like, also, is this going to be the time that I finally lose it? Like I'm
Uh-huh.
20 something years old now. I still haven't
Uh-huh.
lost my virginity. And like, I just
Uh-huh.
felt a lot of pressure from that thought, as well
Mm.
as, wanting to please my partner. I didn't
Mm.
even care so much about my own pleasure. It was like, I want to get this monkey off my back of,
God,
throwing out
it's
my V card, and I
yeah,
want to
it's
please
like
this person. So they're happy with me.
it's like all of your anxiety comes from the external, like comes from
Right.
society, which is,
Yeah.
like when is your sexual debut? Like, oh, this is way too late. And so it's the society. And then it's
Right.
your partner, which is like a relational anxiety, like you're trying to please your partner. So none of this is like from your personal experience. Do you think that you are in general an anxious person or is it
No.
just sexual?
It was just sexual. I've not really been that anxious of a person my entire life. It was really just in this one category of my life, the sexual sphere, that
So it's
I
like
really
you're
felt it.
you're able to like disconnect your two selves. So like
Yeah.
your daily life, Matt is like a confident guy, going to school, getting a job, just adulting. And then when sexual situation is about to occur, then you flip a switch and you're this like sexually anxious Matt. That's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, I don't know if my dick can get hard.
It was kind of like an alter ego, I guess,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
because like in other areas of my life, like you said, like I felt pretty confident. It's just in the
Yeah.
sexual world, it was like the secret that I had, where I
Oh,
still don't know how to do this, and like that, led to more anxiety, and I kept that hidden, and
wow.
yeah.
So what happened?
So so my whole approach to the thing was, all right, I know this is going to be a bumpy road, but I'm gonna quit the porn was the first step because that was the
Ooh,
underlying issue.
like
And
completely.
yeah, so I went like once I realized I had this problem, I like actively was trying to like get off of it, and I found some good resources. Like there's a Reddit page called Reddit NoFap. They call themselves they call themselves Fapstronauts. It's a bunch of guys supporting each other who realize they have porn addictions, and they come up with strategies to help them through it.
Oh
That's
my
that's a good
god.
resource. I read some books. I think one of them by that same guy that gave the TED Talk, Gary Wilson,
Uh-huh.
and understanding the problem was step one. And then it's like my support network of my friends. I'm starting to wean myself off of it, and like I had a couple hiccups in the first month or so, but then I eventually ended up on like this streak of I don't know, like 6 to 8 months of not masturbating or looking at porn at all. And during that time, I was going on
Damn.
a lot
Six
of
to eight
dates.
months.
Yeah, no ejaculation whatsoever.
Whoa.
I was trying to, as they say in the NoFap community, I was trying to
Ah,
reset my brain.
no fap community.
Yeah, the
There is a
NoFappers.
community for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, they were really helpful. Um, so the I was doing all that and I was still dating, and I knew that it was going to be a bumpy road while dating. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't going to just start working overnight. So I just kind of had this attitude, you know what, I'm going to roll with the punches. I know this thing isn't going to plague me significantly for the rest of my
Mhm.
life. I know a ton of people deal with it, and I just had a positive attitude of the whole thing. And then along the way, I learned that, like, if I communicated honestly and openly with my partners and like owned my vulnerabilities and shared
Uh-huh.
them,
Uh-huh.
that was like a major turn on for them
Yeah,
anyway.
hell yeah.
Yeah, they love it. Like communication, I learned is like a superpower in the bedroom.
Dude,
And
communication is lube. Give
exactly.
me a man that's respectful and communicative. I am super wet.
Right, exactly. And so having that thought too, it's like, man, I feel like a lot of people don't realize how important this is. And I think I figured it out. And like that kind of gave me more confidence.
Nice.
And it also makes you more human to your partner.
Totally.
And because they probably feel some amount of like pressure in a sexual situation with a new
Hmm.
individual as well. So if like you
Hmm.
share like, hey, like I'm hoping I'm not just going to be like a two pump chump or whatever. They might be like, oh, thank God, like I feel like less pressure on me to do. Like we're going to still do our best, but like we're both human, and
So
we're
like
going to make the best of it.
you disclosed that you have anxiety or that you're potentially not going to be able to get an erection. Like, did you
Uh,
talk about that or like,
sometimes if conversation before the sexual encounter kind of went in that direction, I
uh-huh,
might bring it up.
uh-huh,
But usually, like in the moment, if I wasn't able to get an erection, I'd be like, this happens sometimes. Don't worry about it. Like I can
uh-huh,
still help you out. We can still have a good time. I just
totally,
kind of like taking ownership of like, all right, this is happening, but
uh-huh,
it's not a bad thing.
uh-huh.
We can still be satisfied by the end of the night. And
Totally. You can
that was
finger
my
her,
mindset.
you can
Yeah.
oral, like all of that is great.
Yeah. Like there's things I can do. Don't
Right.
worry. So
There's things I can do. Don't worry. Okay, and then what else?
and then I don't know, like just over time it slowly became less and less of an issue. And that's not to say that I still don't have nights where like I can't perform. That still does happen to me from time to time,
Uh-huh.
but it's much more rare when that happens. And I've come to sort of think of my libido as something that ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
where like some weeks I'm really horny. Some
Yeah.
weeks no, I don't like sex might be the furthest thing from my mind. And I've learned that as long as I maintain good communication with my partner through those times,
Uh-huh.
it's not a big deal at all. And we work through it. And just because I can't get an erection doesn't mean that we can't be intimate.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, not for nothing, but some of my favorite sexual experiences with partners are the ones where my dick wouldn't work, but we tried anyway.
Oh.
Like there was this one girl who I was on a date with, and things were getting hot and heavy. It was going good, and we went back to her place, and I was not able to get an erection, completely
Uh-huh.
100% flaccid. But
Uh-huh.
we tried for like well over an hour to get this thing up, and it was just clear it wasn't going to happen. We laughed about it. It wasn't a big deal. Then finally, I was like, hang on. I think I might be hard enough to penetrate. So we get ready into position. And I lasted for 4 seconds and then finished. And like right afterwards, we were so excited. We high-fived. We're like, yeah, we did it. And it was just such an emotionally gratifying sexual encounter.
Oh my
And
God.
objectively speaking, from a physical point of view, not a good sexual performance, but emotionally, it was amazing. And I've had a lot of situations like that with other partners, including my current partner, and they're fun for the same reasons. And I'll tell you what, I feel more proud of those times that I've had sex than the ones where they were objectively good sexual performances, because it requires like a lot of teamwork, communication,
Yeah.
and collaboration.
Were you pleasuring her?
Yeah, and I got to pleasure her, and she had a good time. I communicate to make sure that like we were all happy by the end of it. And it's like, you know what? We were dealing with of cards, and we still made it work at the end. And I feel very proud of those moments more so than the ones where everything works as usual.
Yes. Yes. I love that you shared that, because like as a woman, and I've had a lot of male partners, and let me tell you something. Like sometimes the penetration itself doesn't even matter.
Right.
It's like all of that, like making out, like long period of kissing and grabbing and touching each other's parts and being playful and being passionate, um and like a lot of pleasure comes from my partner pleasuring me.
Yeah. Oh,
And then
for
of
sure.
course, like penetrative sex is an amazing bonus, but like I said, like it's sometimes not necessary.
Yeah.
Like if you're good at, I would say practice fingering, boys, if anything. If you're good at fingering, if you're good at giving like oral, all of that is explosive, is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And actually, that was one of my strategies when I was in like the whole dating phase. Was I read this book called She Comes First. It's a great book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great book. Everyone should read it. But like one of the things it talks about is, in the title, she comes first. So like, but like, especially if you're in a situation like I was in, where like you're not even sure if you can get an erection.
Uh-huh.
If you're going to be in a sexual encounter, you can put uh, the focus on your partner, please her. Maybe during that course of time, you end up getting aroused, and it's like not a big deal anyway. But she's going to really greatly appreciate the effort that you're putting in as well. And it kind of like takes a lot of the pressure off of you as the man, I guess, to get an erection and be able to have penetrative sex. That's not always the goal. Sex.
Right.
And that was an important thought for me to learn as well.
Totally. Thank God someone is actually sharing this like candid experience story, because it's so true. And like I said, millions of people are experiencing this, and most of them are in denial. They don't want to accept that this is the problem. They don't want to find a solution. And like, look at you here, like experiencing it for, years and found a solution in between. And also like finally like coming out of it this is a beautiful story. And I'm grateful that you're sharing it on my podcast.
Yeah, of course.
I am going to move into our game segment, which is
Great.
The hot or not with Dr. Tara. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. 1, long foreplay.
Hot.
2, sloppy kisses.
Hot.
3, threesome.
Very hot.
4, squirting.
Very hot.
Anything goes with Matt. 5, butt plug.
Hot.
6, BDSM.
Not for me.
7, vibrators.
Hot.
8, anal.
Not.
9, choking.
Hot.
Number 10, porn.
Not.
I love that you're like my audience can't see your face, but I can.
Yeah, like, I mean, like
not.
Porn is, objectively hot, but I stay away from it. So not.
Right. Like, and it's your personal experience, and
Right.
I value you sharing that. So
Right.
before you go, what's your last words, or like that one advice you want to give men who perhaps experience situational sexual anxiety?
I think maybe the most important thing is this whole subject can be, stressful for anybody to handle. And I think that one of the most important things you can do is just not, or try to not feel so much shame toward yourself. This is something that millions of people deal with. It is completely normal. Everyone's on their own journey, and it's not insurmountable. So just keep that in mind, and I hope that will hopefully reduce any kind of stress or feelings of shame that you might be having.
Yes, beautiful last words. And also finding community, right?
Yes,
If
very
if there's a
important.
moral of the story that I'm listening here, is like that particular moment where you like found this community and kind of just talking to your friends and like being authentic about your experience, seems like that was like a switch where the narrative in your life had changed for you.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
Very, very
rather than
appreciative
this
of
like
everyone that helped me.
yeah, rather than like this misguided man, you're owning up to it and like finding solutions, just
Right,
like any other
exactly.
human being would do.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. Bye, loves. I hope you're having an orgasmic day.
Have you ever wanted an STD test but didn't have time to go to a clinic? Now there is a solution. Let's Get Checked has an at-home STD test with fast results. It's simple. You order your test, collect your sample, and receive your accurate results online. They also provide medication at no extra cost for most states. There are also other health and wellness tests for men and women as well. Check out Let's Get Checked. The link is in my episode description, and the discount code is Dr. Tara. And have a worry-free orgasmic time.
Thanks for listening. This was Love Bites. Love Bites. By Dr. Tara. Follow Dr. Tara on social media at lovebites.co. Have an orgasmic day.